what you find is this idea that the symbolic father cannot be a facilitator, not only of authority, but of any creation of any new desire, any development of the child itself, that there can be, I guess you could say, purely within the imaginary, which is an aggressive state, a development of the self or something like this.
It's also a very loving state. Identification happens around them too, and it's very aggressive and loving at the same time. It's
absolutely. And you know, there's a fascination in
big fish.
There's a fascination in popular culture with bringing the primal father back and assassinating him. And
have you seen Big Fish?
Yeah, it's been a while. Yeah.
That would be a great movie.
Yeah, it's good.
And Barbarian Invasions also, Canadian movie.
Yes.
Address the topic of the father in a fantabulous manner.
And so does Fight Club. Fight Club with Brad Pitt, because what are they doing but staging the imaginary aggression without, he calls the father, he says, I've graduated from college, what do I do? Get a job. He says, all of these empty gestures, but there's nothing that can really facilitate anything outside of that, so they remain. And many teen drama films follow this same logic. But one of the interesting things I find too is that whenever you see the depiction of reconciliation between father and son in popular culture, why is it always at the cost of the father's absolute humiliation? It's a very interesting point. And I don't know that it represents a change culturally as much as perhaps even during Freud's times, the same could be said as well. I don't know. But one of the things I found most interesting in my research for this presentation was precisely this idea that Lacan maintained, he famously said, all of my followers, you consider yourselves to be atheists, I will prove to you that you are not. The truths of Freud, which has to do with the law of signifier, but also has to do with the father myth, means that religion is still more alive. Which is why I think at some point Lacan says that it is the people who actually maintain direct belief within the religious thing are actually the ones that believe the least, which is a whole other very interesting thing. But I found the piece on religion to be quite interesting, and my friend Mohammed, who's a religion scholar at Georgetown, has joined us tonight as well, and he and I have many conversations about these things, so thank you for coming. Did anybody else have any questions or things they wanted to throw in there?
I'd like to make a brief little something. So you're saying that, if I understand you correctly, that part of the function of the name of the father is to teach you how to desire, to sort of vulgarize what you're saying.
Sure.
And I think there's a discussion that I think you're privy to that's happening on the so-called Lacanian left between people like Jody Dean and Jacques and some of these other people, where the question is, what is the correct form for the desire of the political subject?
Right.
How should a political subject want? Right. Should it want according to the form of drive? Should it want according to the form of psychotic desire or the lack of desire? Should it want, how precisely should it be wanting? And I'm wondering how you think the name of the father would relate to that situation, because what it seems like to me is we've lost the communist name of the father or the socialist name of the father, and in the lack of that, we now don't know as a group how to want anymore.
That's a nice point. Yeah. Well, I would refer to the group analysis by Freud to begin with on this question. And there's many different readings of this. Freud argues that you have a certain narcissistic identification with the leader, whereby the subjects, through their identification with the leader, forego their own narcissism for the participation in the leader's narcissism. And that somehow becomes a kind of mediating link for the bond that takes place. And of course, there is a sort of post-totalitarian question, is psychoanalysis still relevant when you don't have those social formations? So that's an open question. One of the things that is important is not so much name of the father, but Oedipus itself, which is linked to it as a mode of subjectivity. And I think if you look at some of the work, say, of Deleuze, who in Deleuze is anti-Oedipus, Lacan was highly influenced by it, and there's been many works written on it, and this is why perhaps name of the father is moved away from in the late Lacan. And a lot of it also has to do with this question of normalization. Many people on the political left don't want to throw in the law of the father because they think that it will lead not to even hierarchy, but that it will lead to a certain normalization of the status quo or of an existing social order, but it won't radicalize that order.
But the name of the father is normalizing, it's not normative.
Yeah, so that's true. You're right.
But it is normative or normalizing in as much as it allows a sexuation access to in language.
Yes. That
is the only thing. So when I don't know really how is it that academia in social sciences really read this, because I'm pretty much a clinician.
Yeah.
But what I do understand is that there is something that is missing in the reading of what is at stake and really in the name of the father. We actually, some of us, were just in Paris not too long ago, last July, where we heard a fantastic presentation precisely on the name of the father by Colette Soler, and she was explaining that a father who transmits the law, a father who may leave the legacy of accessing a sexuated position in language, is one that somehow dissimulates its own choice of jouissance enough. So so it's somewhat translucent, but it is dissimulated enough.
Yeah.
The choice of the jouissance of the father, so that is precisely the point that is at concern, because if we think of the early formulation of Lacan of the metaphor on psychosis that you were quoting at the beginning, when you were speaking to Seminar 3.
And 5,
and you were saying the metaphor, and 5, when you were saying the name of the father metaphorizes the desire of the mother or maternal desire or so on, it is precisely this mysterious moment of the 3 times of the Oedipus that is at stake when we consider what is the choice in structure by each subject.
Yeah, that's good.
So when we are at that cross moment, precisely, there are fathers, and with this I don't mean men, I mean people that occupy that function, very well may be women, or sometimes even wolves, as we know.
Yeah.
So then at that precise moment, when the access is possible, it's only because it linked the possibility of entering to the law, which means that something has already been relinquished. Some point of jouissance has been relinquished in order to access desire. So that name of the father, the one that says dire que non, that's what Colette Soler was stating, which doesn't mean no, don't touch that. Right. It's a saying that conveys this translusive connection that jouissance has with desire by way of etia.
Yeah, that's very nice. But I would say, towards his point, you're talking about individuation on a subject.
Clinical. All I know is clinical.
And all clinical. But I would say one of the characteristic traits of university discourse is this explosion of many small fathers.
In as much as transfer.
And this is one of the interesting realizations of why Schreber's case is an epochal shift into modernity, because what you have is precisely the abandonment of, I guess you could say, master signifier fathers. You have and one way in which theorists talk about this is the explosion of expert culture. So self-help presents an explosion of, I guess you could say, small fathers, right? But none that would.
Symptomatic places, but that's just my choice.
What did you say?
I would say symptomatic places.
That's nice.
Like self-help, the books of self-help by 7 Steps to Success and all that kind of stuff. That level of expertise,
right,
that is very much pop, should we say, or part of the new agey kind of things that appear around us all the time, precisely in the realm of mental health.
Yeah, absolutely.
Where there is, I don't know, the proliferation of different schools of, I think calling them schools is already a bit much, but in these, you know, proliferation, plurally appearing everywhere, they all miss the one point, which is, it is not about completing. It is not about making you happy. Psychoanalysis is the one place where we are safe from the mandate of capitalism of enjoy.
Yeah, absolutely.
All the time.
Absolutely.
Right?
Yeah.
Jacques would probably be one to quote on that.
Yeah, absolutely. No, that's helpful. Yeah. No, I think that's exactly right. So when you talk about back to your question,
I guess I'll add a little bit of spice to it. I think that, you know, there's the famous 4 Kantian questions, right? And I think that
what can I hope for? What can I know?
Right. And then what is man, sort of summing it all up.
All right.
And I think that nowadays it seems to me, especially in context, this is something I've been thinking about already, but especially in the context of your presentation, that a 5th question that also sums up everything could be said as, what am I to want? Or what can I, you know, how should I want? Maybe even more. And that sort of sums up all the questions that are possible of asking as the utmost horizon of philosophy today.
That's nice. Yeah.
Maybe that's another way of restating what I'm asking.
Yeah.
So then I have a question for you and for the group. So this grandfather tells me that he goes to visit his grandchildren. And so he arrives at the house and he's sitting with the grandchildren, and after dinner they leave, and only one who's between 5 and 6 stays and starts talking to the grandfather. And so he asks the grandfather, how old are you? And the grandfather tells him, well, you know how old I am, huh? Haven't your mother told you? And he said, actually, yes. And so he says, I forget what the number is, he says, yeah, and he begins to count. You're 70, and the grandfather said yes, and then you're 71, 72, 73. And the grandfather said, yes, go on. He goes on, and then he says, and then you're 100. And then suddenly the child, he's about 5 and a half, says, and then you die. And as he says that, he runs away from the table. So my question is, what's going on with the name of the Father in that little vignette?
Very interesting. I like that.
Lovely, Macario, lovely.
That's fascinating. This is a clinical experience.
Because there's something going on with the name of the Father right there.
Yeah,
you know?
Sure.
Why do you think something is going on with the name of the Father right there, Macario? It's actually quite fascinating that the child is able to say that.
Why not, Gabriela? Why not?
I had the same experience. My children
came
home and they asked my own father, and when are you going to die? It was happily in English, and says my father, what did they ask?
But it's very interesting because, you know, the dead father is right there, the theme, it's right there.
Right.
There is something working there with the dead father and the signifier. Don't you think, Gabriela?
Absolutely, but to me what is going on is actually, it's beautifully put in your example. It's very, very clear, in as much as the link between the signifier of the Father and death is precisely that in order to be love, it needs to be a dead signifier.
So why were you asking me you seem to be doubtful about what I was saying about the Father, Gabriela?
I'm just teasing you,
okay. And now you tell me it's a beautiful story. Thank you, Gabriela. I agree with you now.
You're welcome.
One way that the name of the Father may be implicated in that vignette as well is the idea of delineation, of establishing limits within which one can live.
Yeah, but it's also, and then you die and you're still the law.
Well, of course.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, could you, I like that, but I missed half of that. Would you mind repeating that?
Nate?
Oh, yeah. So what I said was that the name of the Father could also be involved in that vignette in the process of delineation and establishing limits within which one can live.
Okay,
And,
see.
and by that I also mean desire.
Thank you. Yeah, I like that. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, that is a core function.
Delineating limits, it's enough, right?
Yeah.
Live,
right.
desire, whatever. Delineating limits. Yeah.
I think one of the interesting things about that second dialectic is that in the first one, it's about individuation. In the second one, which we might say is a societal dialectic from Totem and Taboo, it's about attaining the status of ego ideal, but also ego ideal for Freud in group analysis is about love, ultimately. It's about the fulfillment of love, and that's something that I think for political purposes is quite important, and which makes perhaps this law of the father something that may make the little hairs stand up on people's, because of the horrors of the 20th century of totalitarian fathers. And even if you know in Africa, in Uganda, you have Joseph Kony, who, a very interesting return of a kind of repressed real, thinks that he is living out Joseph's war from the Old Testament in the horror that he's inflicting on his own people, using child soldiers and framing the other in the old biblical Amalek, which is the other that must be extinguished. I mean, that's happening right now. It's not happening back in 30 years ago. So I think a lot of this stuff is, and hopefully there was some symmetry between these dialectical movements. And I think it's fair to say by seminar 23 and beyond, name of the Father is outside of the dialectic as Sinthome. But I'm not fully an expert on that seminar, so I couldn't speak much more to it than that. I also found biographically the pressure that Lacan faced during his own time. Because Jacques Miller says it's part of the reason why he moved to the Matines, why he moved. 4 fundamental concepts of psychoanalysis came in replacement for the Non-Existent Seminar on Name of the Father, because he was facing pressure on the concept to define it, to determine it. It was almost a hysterical feeling that he faced. And it's why it was crucial to his turn to formalization, and his movement away from Name of the Father itself.
I think precisely that pressure helped him make use of the Name of the Father.
I can see that.
I think that's exactly what happened, precisely after the Excommunication Act and his the whole scheme of things that happened with Lowenstein at that point, which was his own analyst.
Right.
So I think that in that realm, I don't know that, I mean, I understand that Miller is one of the most acute readers of Lacan, although there are some things that precisely when it comes to points where Lacan moves to more formal logics, the logician was Miller. So Miller is quite infatuated with him also at this point. It's a mutual thing, actually. When he speaks to the logician, even at the point of 68, at the point of the psychoanalytic act, in that seminar, even when he speaks to this logician that is always in the first row, and he speaks in many sessions like this, he's pointing to Miller. So in that sense, I wonder if that actually did not quite help the detour that made him much more particular in his reading of Freud and in his own beyond, in his own making use, right?
Right.
And what the one question that still stands to me after having worked with some of the colleagues you have around you for more than a year on a cartel on Seminar 17 on the other side of psychoanalysis is why did Freud write Totem and Taboo? What is the logical need that makes Totem and Taboo necessary at that point in the Freudian works? That is a question that still stands to me. It's quite curious. even after having read the seminar and work with some Parisian colleagues around in the cartel and so on, and yet is a question that doesn't quite.
I think doesn't Lacan in Seminar 17 talk about, like I said, Totem and Taboo teaches us two things. Brotherhood is founded on segregation, and Oedipus could only have access, it has to do with castration, and the access to the mother's desire for Oedipus were the two notions, so that Totem and Taboo was intimately connected to the Oedipal myth itself, almost maybe as not a revision, but it was in conversation, either consciously or unconsciously, with that myth, was it not?
Sure.
Because it complements it so much. I mean, they're so
absolutely.
interrelated.
But there's still Lacan saying, that I don't know that he says, the Oedipus is useless. Useless up until the point where we can sort of see the precipitates of the Oedipus complex, which is the superego.
Yes.
The superego has to, again, a link to jouissance and to maternal design.
Yes.
Especially at the end of analysis.
Yes.
And yet it's still a question in as much as it has to do somewhat with the affects that Lacan touches upon also in that seminar, in Seminar 17. How was it, Macario, that Luis put it when we were working on this? I think it was like a shame to die, a shame that would make you want to die, which is not just any shame, it's just a very particular shame, and it is an affect of the real that comes about around the end of analysis, around the point of break of what it would be, for all of us frame in mind, what it would be Breuer's horror to the act with Anao, that point of an analysis where you would actually hang on and break that horrific moment and go through. It's a very interesting point in any analysis, I think. But this shame of dying, this affect of the real along with anguish, is quite interesting how he articulates that in that seminar. And that has somewhat to do with the first formulations of the metaphor of the father and of the function of the father, I feel.
Yeah. And it's very interesting you say about shame, because in John Kopchak has this formula for shame, which is a Lacanian formula, which is the affect of shame is the indication that the big other does not exist. It is the confrontation for the subject, that the big other is not operative, so to speak, and that is what induces shame, which I think is a very interesting. Shame is a fascinating affect. I don't know how it's related to the publication of Totem and Taboo, but maybe you were beyond that point when you mentioned that. But
yeah, probably. But there's quite a shame in the horde when they do.
Right.
Assassinate the father.
Right. But in group analysis and the ego, I really read that text as very complementary to, because if one of the core ideas of Totem and Taboo has to do with the establishment of civilization, the establishment of culture, the conditions of desire within social bodies, and then the formation of group solidarity, Freud's giving us a formula through ego identification with the master/leader, maybe father, that is one grounded in love. And so ultimately it's not a horror story. It's not a horror story. It is something that actually is a dialectical process.
Oedipus was in love with Jacques.
Yeah.
And it's quite a horror story.
Okay, go ahead, Nate.
Well, I was just going to say, at the same time, though, Daniel, you mentioned that in Totem and Taboo, after the horde kills the father, they establish the social bond.
Yeah.
Well, one of the reasons, at least in Totem and Taboo, that the social bond is established is that no one will ever again try to possess, if we use Lacanian language, all of the jouissance, because it's
a pact. That's why it's in agreement, right?
Yeah, well, it's a pact, not necessarily for love, but so everyone else won't kill each other.
You're right.
Right. And it's based on the provision of jouissance, not love.
Yeah, love comes later.
Yeah,
love comes later, not at the site of the bond.
Are you familiar with Lacan's article, British Psychiatry and the War?
Well, but I've heard of it. I never.
Brilliant piece, Margario.
Pardon me?
Brilliant piece.
Yeah, because it connects with this, what would you just finish saying, because Lacan goes to England at the end of when the war is ending and spends about 5 weeks with Bion and Rickman because he's very interested in their work with groups. And one of his basic comments, and it's in that article, is that says that Freud neglected the horizontal relationship among the brothers. What you were saying before, the pact among the brothers, which is a fraternal pact, is to
right.
And then he connects that with democracy. With the whole field of democracy. It's a very beautiful article, you know. It
sounds nice.
It's in the psychoanalytical notebooks of the London Circle. I can give you the reference later on it. I don't remember the number, you know, but.
Macario, he makes clear also. I think is in that paper. Remind me if I'm misleading it, but I think that is also in that paper that he mentions that even though Freud sort of misreads this fraternal bond, this horizontal bond, as you say, that horizontal bond is only possible once the chief of the tribe sort of it's killed.
Right.
Yeah. So the access to horizontality, the access to the fraternal, to the pack, or the gregarious deal, is only after they have killed the father. Right?
He doesn't quite mention that in that article. What he mentions is, he praises the British, pretty much the invention of group psychotherapy by the British. And he praises them how he says that in the impasse that the group psychology and the ego still left, in that impasse, the British find a way to create a new modality.
That's very interesting.
And Lacan was not that prone to praise.
Did you say the impasse of the ego psychologist?
No. No, not ego psychologist. Of Freud's.
Freud's impasse.
Of Freud's group psychology and the analysis of the ego, you know.
I see.
The other thing that I think is interesting is what Rudinesco mentions in her biography of Lacan, that Lacan's brother, the Benedictine monk, says to Rudinesco, because one of the sources that she used for the biography, that he was convinced that what had motivated Lacan to come up with the concept of the name of the father was the abusive grandfather. His father's father, who was very abusive with Lacan's own father and himself, that it was a horror to deal with that man. Then that's what his brother, it's an interesting anecdotal, but in terms of conflict and then what Lacan has to deal with the IPA, etc., it's a kind of very interesting anecdotal connection, you know.
It's very interesting, Yeah, because, you know, in the second stage, the reign of the symbolic father, you know, a lot of contemporary philosophers are looking, say, to reinterpret Christianity as the reign of the son, precisely because, as you guys know, St. Paul, in his foundation of Christianity, founded it in opposition to a series of master discourses of his own time, one of which was the philosophers in Greece, but one of which was also the other reigning religions of the time, and he founded it purely on the truth of the resurrection, which had to do with the sort of the reign of the sons, brotherhood, equality, fraternity, etc. So there is something in a certain reading of Christianity that can be linked up to this Freudian view of culture, of social bonds, that can be quite emancipatory, and I think a lot of thinkers debate the extent to which is why Freud's group psychology is still so relevant today. Which is, to what extent is it emancipatory? To what extent is it not? And it's very robust. You know, it's such a rich potential there.
It's one book that Freud did not want to be published under any circumstances. It got published when
is that right?
Oh yeah, when it was in print, it was too late for Freud to say
The
no.
group analysis one.
Yes.
Do you know why?
I have a recent book that came out on that. I don't remember now why, but it stated it clearly. You know, that he was not very happy with the book, and yet you know, people were glad that he didn't get to stop the publication because it was already up. You know.
Incredible.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dan.
Thank you. Thank you all.
Very well.
Thank you.
So
There you go.
our next meeting will be on Wednesday, March 5th. And our presenter is going to be Nate Kozer.
Yeah, who's online right now,
Yes.
still.
Yeah.
Oh, Nate, I'm so sorry. I'm going to miss you. You'll
Oh, no.
have to, because I'll be out of town doing something else, you know.
What's the
You
topic?
can always connect on Skype, Macario.
I cannot that day. I am
Well,
connected to many other things.
If that's the case, Macario, I'll send you a copy of the paper.
I really appreciate that, Nate. Thank you.
Yeah.
And also, I would on the ending notes of the meeting of tonight, I wanted to let you all know that there will be possibility to access by Skype, and anyway, you're all invited to come in person if you so desire. We will have a series of talks, conferences by Dr. Gabriel Lombardi, an analyst, an AME of our school, who will be coming to Colorado on the 27th and 28th of February. So that's a Thursday and Friday, and I will be sending you all some information on this, flyers and the like kind of things by email. But there will be access by Skype if you all want to register. So I will be sending you all that information. The theme is desire. One of the talks is going to be at the Department of Philosophy of Colorado College, who has a minor in Lacanian analysis, and we will, that talk is called Dora Through the Lacan Glass, sort of paraphrasing Lewis Carroll. And there will be another talk on Denver Psychoanalytic Society and the Colorado Forum that is called Paradoxes of Desire Psychoanalytic Clinic. And we will be talking about desire and guilt in our forum, and that entails and includes everyone in Washington as well. There will be Skype access to all of these and more information to follow on it. So keep your eyes open.
Gabriela, question. The third presentation is on that Friday, the 28th at 2 o'clock. Am I correct?
The third there is one presentation on Thursday at 2. Another presentation, and this is all Mountain Time for you all, just for reference. The second presentation is on 2 p.m. on Friday, that is Guilt and Desire. And then the last one is at 7 p.m. on Friday, which will be 9 p.m. your time, you all.
Oh, it's at 7 p.m. on Friday. Okay.
I wanted to ask Nate, what's the topic of your March talk?
Yeah, so I haven't formalized a title yet, but I'm going to be using a case of analysis that I'm working with right now to begin to talk about the relationship between objet A and the dream.
Great. Exciting.
Hopefully.
Okay. Great.
Will be, I'm sure.
Very good.
Okay, so more information to follow on all of these. You'll soon receive a flyer to Nate's presentation and Lombardi's series on desire in Colorado. And I have to go feed a child, so please call me. I gotta go.
Bye-bye.
Thank you so much,
There's
Daniel,
a preliminary poster
Thank
up
you.
on the website already.
and we will see you soon, you all.
Bye-bye.
Bye, Gabriela.
Bye.
Bye, bye, bye.
And
Right.
I'd also like to mention that in April 12th, Colette Soler will be with us.
Presenting.
Yes.
Great. Excellent.
For,
As is, on the weekend?
Yes.
It's a Saturday, all day Saturday.
Okay.
She will be presenting.
Great.
Yeah, and I have already, we have been in touch with Washington School to reserve the conference room for that Saturday morning.
Mm-hmm.
So that we have that space already for her presentation. The school will, anyway, we'll talk more about that, but
Yes,
there
we
will be a joint venture with the school and
But
they will
it's-
advertise also, so.
Oh, wow.
Save the date.
So it's, they accepted as a joint venture?
Yeah, I spoke today to Bill Weirs and they're gonna meet, and this Friday, they're gonna meet in their staff meeting and then I'll meet with them later and we'll
Wonderful.
formalize it. You know.
Very good, you are a powerful man.
I don't know, I'm a bridge. Yeah.
And thank you, Wilbur,
Okay,
for
thank you.
opening your home one more time
Thank you.
over and